If you work in local government long enough, you'll face criticism. That's part of the job. But what happens when it stops being about policy and becomes personal? What happens when a group, organized, vocal, and relentless, decides you are the problem? When they come not just for your ideas, but for your name, your reputation, even your livelihood. This episode isn't about theory, it's about survival. And if it hasn't happened to you yet, stick around, because I'm going to walk you through exactly what it looks like when the mob comes for a city manager, how it nearly broke me, and what I learned about leadership, loyalty, and reclaiming your power on the other side. What will you do when the mob comes for you? Welcome to Gov360, your full circle view on local government. This is the show for local government professionals who want to lead with impact, master their craft, and rise to the top of the profession. Cancel culture in local government doesn't look like a celebrity getting dropped from a movie or losing a sponsorship. It looks like anonymous members of Facebook groups spreading misinformation, public comment time weaponized against you week after week, PRA requests aimed at you, not for transparency, but to dig up dirt. Council members suddenly distancing themselves because they're getting pressure. Entire campaigns built to make you quit or be fired. It's not a culture war, it's a control war. And if you become the symbol of change, you become the target. There's a line you cross as a city manager where suddenly it's not about the work anymore. It's about your leadership. Not even about the issues. It becomes about you, your name, your reputation, your livelihood. When the mob comes, it doesn't knock. It kicks in the door and it doesn't care what's true. In today's episode, I want to take you somewhere uncomfortable, but also necessary. Because cancel culture isn't just on college campuses or Twitter. It's in council chambers. It's in comment sections. It's in our cities. And it's forcing good public servants, maybe even you, to choose between integrity and survival. So what does cancel culture really look like in local government? Let's start by redefining the term. Cancel culture is often misunderstood, politicized. But in the world of local government, it's not about fame or fortune. It's about removal, silencing, discrediting, intimidating, and it often happens behind a curtain of legitimacy. It doesn't look like a viral scandal. It looks like a council meeting stacked with hostile public speakers, a closed session full of tension and vague threats, PRA requests asking for every email you've ever written, made up community coalitions funded by people who never show their faces, watchdog Facebook pages whose only goal is to watch you fail. It's slow, calculated, and coordinated. And when it comes, it's lonely. Now, I'd like to share something deeply personal. In the second community I served as city manager, I didn't just witness this, I lived it for 2 years. And it started even before my first day on the job. A member of the city council had leaked that I was likely to be appointed. A group of anti-growth residents who were opposed to the new majority on the city council and assumed that I was their hand-picked puppet to usher in a new era of unconstrained development started launching attacks at me based on nothing more than a Google search and false assumptions about my motivations based on my professional background. These people didn't know me. They didn't bother to reach out and talk to me before making up their minds that I was the wrong guy for the job. And they didn't stick to facts or pertinent issues. Instead, they launched a vicious string of personal attacks filled with disinformation and false accusations. They attacked me during public comment, on social media, in phone calls and emails to the council, in letters to the editor in the local paper. They even created a nasty website filled with childish insults that perpetuated the lies. I had done nothing to these people. I hadn't even started on the job yet, but none of that mattered. I had inadvertently stepped right in the middle of a war between factions with drastically varying visions for the future of the community. But this group was different than anything I had previously experienced. They were organized, well-funded, had no regard for the truth, and were absolutely vicious. The results? My experience, my professionalism, my integrity, my motivations, my reputation were all being very publicly dragged through the mud. This went on for the entire 2 years I worked for that city. I remember one night after I was appointed, but before starting the job, during the period of time where we were negotiating my contract, my wife and I were listening to public comment. She started crying. I'll never forget it. She said, "Why are they doing this? You're a good person. You haven't done anything to these people. They're not even giving you a chance." It broke my heart to see my family impacted and hurting. Let's be honest. Most people don't care about city managers. The vast majority of residents don't even know what a city manager is. We don't run for office. We try to stay out of the headlines. We don't typically go viral. And city managers are not often the leading characters in movies that depict government or politics. But when a group with power, or the illusion of power, wants to control the direction of a city, the city manager often becomes a target. Why? Because we execute. Because we move things forward, because we build things, and growth scares people who are used to control. So when a city starts changing, growing, modernizing, innovating, the resistance often forms around fear. And that fear turns into opposition, and that opposition looks for a face, a symbol. And that's when they find you. In Yucaipa, I became that symbol. And once you're the symbol, you don't get treated like a person anymore. You become a target, a hashtag, a headline. And worst of all, you often become a liability to the very council that keeps you employed, because it's far easier to sacrifice one person than to stand up to the mob. Now, let's talk about ethics, specifically the ICMA Code of Ethics and the broader unspoken rules of professional city management. We are taught to stay above the political fray, let elected officials take the hits, speak through our work, not the press. Never engage in public disputes. And in theory, that's all very noble. But in practice, it can be paralyzing. Because what happens when you are the story? What happens when the facts are wrong and you're the only one who knows the truth, but you can't say anything? You end up in what we might call the city manager's trap. You can't defend yourself. You can't campaign, you can't clarify, and you often can't even leave without damaging your reputation. I was living in that trap for months. My initial reaction was to reach out to those who were launching the attacks and spreading misinformation, to meet with them and set the record straight. Surely, when presented with the facts and once they got to know me a little bit, they would see the situation for what it really was and give me a chance. After all, we all lived in the same city and we all wanted what was best for the community. I could not have been more wrong. Such overtures just made things worse. My words were twisted and used as ammunition for fresh rounds of attacks. We then decided to put out a myth versus fact document, again trying to set the record straight and to salvage public trust. The group used the very fact that we were communicating in this manner as an attack, claiming it was inappropriate and politically motivated. There was literally nothing I could do. They had jumped to incorrect conclusions before I even started on the job, had closed their minds to receiving information that might have changed their misguided assumptions, and instead of focusing on real issues, chose instead the politics of personal destruction, seeking to tear down those who they feared might not share their views. The resulting damage was nothing short of catastrophic. A major rift formed in the community. Warring factions used public servants as pawns in their game of high-stakes chess. Morale at City Hall suffered. Tax dollars were wasted on lawsuits and countless hours of staff time responding to public records requests and other public inquiries. The mental health of staff was affected. Families were affected. There's an entire generation of talented, ethical professionals who are being punished, not for misconduct, but for doing their jobs too well in a politically volatile environment. This is what we don't talk about enough. Cancel culture in local government is often a result of doing your job well, not poorly. And there is a tremendous human cost. This part isn't fun, but it's real. Let's talk about what this does to you, not as a city manager, but as a person. You stop sleeping. You start isolating. You get paranoid. Who's with me? Who's talking behind my back? Your family gets scared. Your health starts to slip, physically, emotionally, mentally. You become less of yourself. Because it's not just your job under attack, it's your identity. And even when you do everything right, you can still lose. And you can't post about it. You can't tell your side. You just keep showing up, quiet, composed, bleeding internally. That's the cost. Here's the final insult in all of this. When you're under attack, people around you go silent. Why? Because they're scared too. Council doesn't want to be next. In fact, in Yucaipa, one council member was actually successfully recalled by this group. The rest of the council didn't want to be next. Staff doesn't want to be dragged into it. Colleagues don't want to be tainted by association. And even people who love you don't know what to say. So they say nothing. And that silence is devastating. I remember when the attack started, waiting for someone to stand up in public and say something, anything. I remember sitting there at my place in front of the dais, taking the vicious and completely false attacks on my character, waiting for the city council to step in and defend my reputation. Well, that never happened. But here's the thing. You can't go silent. Even if you don't have a microphone or a media outlet, even if you can't say everything, you have to stay grounded in your voice, in your character, in your leadership. Because cancel culture only wins when it silences your identity. So what can you do when you're the one under attack? Let's pivot now, because up to this point, we've talked about what cancel culture does to you. Now I want to talk about what you can do in return, not to retaliate, but to survive and grow stronger. And by the way, some of these things I didn't get right at the time. Some of this I learned the hard way, and I want to share with you what I learned. Number 1, build trust equity early. The time to earn public trust is before you need it. If you're visible in your community, if people know your face, your values, your voice, it's a lot harder for a lie to stick. Don't just lead the organization, lead the narrative of what public service should look like. Use every platform you can. Your city's PEG channel, newsletters, social media posts, interviews, not to grandstand, but to humanize. Because once the mob starts calling you a corrupt bureaucrat or a developer puppet, people will instinctively believe the version of you they're most familiar with. Make sure it's your version they know. Number 2, document everything. Now, this might sound basic, but it is life-saving. Keep a journal of incidents. Save emails. Back up text messages. Track public comments or meetings. Record conversations where legal. You're not building a lawsuit. You're building a lifeboat. If things go sideways, having a paper trail can protect your job, your benefits, your professional standing, and sometimes your mental health. And if you ever need to quietly brief a council member, a lawyer, or a successor, your notes become a bridge to the truth. Number 3, communicate carefully but consistently. Just because you can't fight in the bud doesn't mean you have to disappear. If you're the one under fire, you can share values publicly. We believe in transparency and due process. Defend your staff without naming names. Highlight progress through storytelling and visuals. Use PEG funds to explain process, not politics. This is also where podcasts like this one, video messaging, or written updates can help. Because if you don't define your leadership, someone else will. I wish I had done more of this early on in Yucaipa. I let the other side own the narrative for far too long. By the time I engaged, the damage had already been done, and I truly believe there was nothing I could have done at that point to turn the tide. Number 4, surround yourself with truth tellers and warriors. This is not a solo sport. None of us are successful in this profession on an island. You need a tight inner circle, a mentor who's been through it, a spouse or friend outside of City Hall who can tell you when you're spiraling, a colleague who can finish your sentences and call your bluff when you're hiding behind stoicism. When the mom isolates you, You need people who pull you back into community. You also need one or two warriors, people who are willing to say publicly what you can't, whether it's a council member, a department head, or a respected resident. Sometimes all it takes is one voice saying, I know this person, and what you're hearing is not true. Number 5, know when it's time to leave. I want to be really honest here. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. Now, for legal reasons, I can't go into the details of my ultimate departure from that city, but I can tell you there was a moment it became clear the attacks were not going to stop. The pressure on the council wasn't going to stop. The impact on my family and on my health wasn't going to stop. There's a myth that staying means strength and leaving means weakness, but stubbornness isn't strength. Strength is knowing the difference between a storm you can wait out and a storm that's been engineered to break you. There are times when leaving preserves your character, your health, your family, and your future. I don't regret standing firm in Yucaipa as long as I did, but I also don't regret knowing when to stop trying to prove myself to people who are never going to see me clearly. Sometimes the exit isn't a failure, it's a reset. So what does this mean for our profession? This isn't just about me or you. This is about the future of local government. If cancel culture, if organized disinformation, online mobs, and politicized pressure campaigns become the norm, then here's what's going to happen. Fewer good people will step into leadership. More decisions will be made based on fear, not facts. Councils will choose political expediency over principle, and our communities will suffer. We cannot let that happen. We need to build a culture where council members understand the value of professional management. Residents are educated on process, not just outcomes. Managers have space to lead courageously, not defensively. And younger professionals can look at our careers and not just say, I want that salary, but I want that life. Because if we don't model it, we're going to lose it. A word to those who are in the storm right now. If you're listening to this and you're in it right now, if you're sitting in your car outside City Hall because you can't stomach walking into another ambush, if you're questioning everything because the attacks won't stop and the council won't speak up, if your spouse or your kids are asking, why are people saying these things about you? I want you to hear me clearly now. You are not alone. You are not crazy. You are not weak. You are standing in the fire and you are still showing up. That makes you stronger than most people will ever be. And I want you to know that there is light after the darkness, that this too shall pass. Now, I want you, as objectively as you possibly can, to assess the situation you're in and be honest with yourself about whether this is something that will eventually resolve itself or if it's time for you to start planning an exit and imagining the next chapter. Know there are still cities out there where the council dynamics are healthy, where the community is rational, friendly, and welcoming, where your experience and your talents will be appreciated. I know this to be true because I am blessed to now be in such a place, and I am so incredibly grateful for it. So here's what I've learned. The mob wins when it steals your identity, when it makes you afraid to lead, when it convinces you that silence equals survival. But we're not here to survive. We're here to serve with clarity, courage, and conviction. Yes, we are vulnerable. Yes, we are accountable. But we are also powerful. And if we stand together, if we share our stories, if we protect one another, even quietly, then no mob, no lie, no smear campaign can ever cancel who we are. Before I wrap up, let me ask a quick favor. We've been fortunate to rank in the top 25% of all podcasts on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and Gov360 has helped grow my LinkedIn following to over 9,000 local government professionals. But we really need to grow our YouTube audience. If you're watching there, please take 2 seconds to hit that share button. It makes a big difference, and it means a lot to me personally. That'll do it for this episode. Thank you for joining us on Gov 360. Until next time, govern boldly, my friends.